Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
So what is surveillance art? We're going to hear all about it on today's Big Blend Radio Toast to the Arts and Parks show with Hasan Elahi. He is the current National Parks Arts Foundation artist in residence at the Hawai'i Volcanoes National Park, which is on the other side, away from the lava flow. We also have Tanya Ortega. She's the founder of the National Parks Arts Foundation. She's back on the show. And, you know, we always talk about how the National Parks Arts Foundation is open to all mediums of art, whether it's poetry, music, film, dance, you name it. And also that their residencies are super unique. We're talking about, you know, staying out in New Mexico at Chaco Canyon or out in dry tortugas on an island or a volcano. You know, this is definitely unique. And today we're definitely going to explore that with Hasan and also Tanya. I encourage you to go to Tanya's website, nationalparks-arts-foundation.org, to learn more about the organization, especially if you're an artist, and sign up for the newsletter so you can get notice of these amazing opportunities. Tanya, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
So doing good. So I know we're recording this for our September show, but I do want our audience to know that we're about to have a nice monsoon storm here in Tucson, but apparently you're getting some big wind in Hawaii. So I know that you may have to disappear, right?
That's true. I might have to go, and I apologize in advance if I do. But you know, that's the price of being in paradise. You gotta kind of roll with the punches of the weather, the lava, you know, that kind of thing. So thank you.
Okay, and we've also got Hasan here. Hasan, welcome. How are you?
Thank you. I'm kind of like, you know, I'm thinking I was in paradise, and now I'm facing a potentially 150 mile an hour winds coming directly at this point from what it looks like on the map.
Wow. So this is, you know, what's so interesting is that we can watch you on your website. So everybody, if you go to elahi.org, it's ELAHI.org. You know, it was so fascinating, you know, all these years of looking at your life, of then knowing where you are. So it's so cool because we always talk about the beautiful B&B or the art B&B that you're staying in, this beautiful vacation house. And so it's changed over the last few days for you, unfortunately. So that.
Yeah, no, sir.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, it's an absolutely beautiful place, and it's beautiful sunshine and beautiful breeze, except the breeze is a little strong right now, considering what's heading this direction.
No, so we appreciate both of you joining us. Hasan, I wanted to start with you talking about your art because it is completely different. Now, you've always been an artist?
Yeah, you know, going back, you know, 20, 25 years, at least on a professional level-ish. And a lot of the work that I've always been doing has always been related to ideas of citizenship and migration and ideas of technology and how we live in between technologies, between an analog and digital world. So that's what I've been working on for over the years. I don't really affiliate my practice with a specific medium or a technique, but it really is about these broad ideas and however way those ideas are represented in visual form.
Yeah, it's a good time to be talking about this for sure. But your work definitely got some exposure because apparently you I was going to say you got exposed for not doing anything, but actually ended up on the FBI's list. And this is interesting because I know with us starting our shows, internet shows, we were one of the first podcasters on Blog Talk Radio, and we were putting up our podcasts on our website and everything, and we had different websites per show. And it's really interesting. We were watching your TED Talk, and you're talking about, you know, who was looking at your site and things like that and what would pull up. And we had like Homeland Security, you know, they would watch our website for our Champagne Sunday show, which is just like art and champagne. And then we had a whole political website, Rants, Raves, and Rock and Roll, and they didn't care about that.
They didn't even watch it.
It's really odd. I don't know who, what, and where, but for some reason, Homeland Security liked us. I don't know if I
Yeah,
should
I mean,
be saying that.
isn't it great that they appreciate champagne? I think
Yeah,
I think it's wonderful.
I think possibly because we spent so many years in Africa that maybe we got on the list. I don't know.
Maybe it's because we call the White House sometimes on our shows.
Oh, so.
Well, we thought we'd teach people
Yeah.
how to call the White House and say, hey, we want this change made, and then maybe that's why.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, you know.
Or, I mean, I know this sounds really off the wall, but the CIA could be looking to rebrand and start their own champagne, not named Champagne TM, of course, but I've never seen CIA
Champagne
wine or
Intelligence
champagne,
Agency.
so yeah, exactly.
I mean, there is a winery in Virginia that bears the name of the current president, not too far from the CIA offices.
That's interesting. I think we should go watch.
So this FBI thing, I mean, because I know you're a world traveler and a foodie, looking at all your food photos that you've taken over the years of pretty much every meal, right? You could have quite a hungry experience. But tell us what happened and how you started documenting, and now it's turned into this whole other form and you know, just a whole other way of interacting too.
Yeah, you know, when I first started this project, it was the last thing on my mind was I'm making an art project. I mean, it was a very pragmatic reaction of what an artist would do had one been placed in such a situation. So basically what happened is shortly after 9/11, I was reported as a terrorist. There was an erroneous report sent in and that said an Arab man had fled on September 12th, who was hoarding explosives. Never mind, I'm not Arab. Never mind, it wasn't the 12th. Never mind, there were no explosives. But, you know, if you see something, say something, even if you don't actually see it and just see it in your head. So the authorities received this bogus report. And because of this, I had to spend the next 6 months of my life justifying every moment of my existence to the FBI, convincing them that I'm not a terrorist. You know, we have this premise that, you know, you're innocent until proven guilty, but not with a magic wand of terrorism and national security. It's the other way around, where you actually have to prove that you are innocent. So that whole process took about 6 months, and during this whole time, after that, I had to go through all these polygraphs and everything, and the FBI at the end said, "Hey, everything's okay." And I was like, "I know everything's okay. That's what I've been trying to tell you all along, guys. I travel a lot. What do we do when the next time this happens and you know, something happens, and how do we avoid this in the future?" And that was the moment that the FBI agent that was working with this said, "Here's some phone numbers. If you get into trouble, give us a call. We'll take care of it." So ever since then, I would contact my FBI agent and let him know what I was doing, what I was up to, not in terms of because I had to, but because I chose to. I decided to preemptively tell him, "Hey, I'm not doing anything shady. I'm just here doing my thing. Just going to this store. I'm going to go buy these cans of soup or whatever." And then those emails, and I'm sorry, those phone calls got turned to emails, and then those emails got longer and longer and longer, and then they got pictures added with them, and there'd be websites that I'd make for my FBI agent, and then I would send photos of everything that I was doing. And then I had one of these moments. It was like, well, wait a minute. Well, the interesting thing is, I would write him like pages and pages and pages. I'd write him like thousands of words, and he would always write back, "Thank you. Be safe." So,
I think they should be paying you in champagne for all the work.
Yeah, I mean, it was such an unbalanced relationship. Here, I'm thinking I'm connecting with them. Here, I'm thinking that that we're having this meaningful connection, but all I get is 4 words. So, I felt kind of jilted by that. So I decided, you know what? Why is this FBI agent so special? Why am I telling just him everything? And that's when I decided to open up everything. And really, what's happening is that, obviously, I have an FBI file, but how thorough were they in taking down every bit of information? So if I know what I told them, and if I take that information and I give it to you directly, then you have every bit of information that the FBI has. And what that basically does is it devalues their entire currency, because the reason their information has value is because no one else has access to it, and they spend an enormous amount of energy and resources keeping that information secret.
Oh, wow. So it's on exclusivity. That's exactly it. It's the exclusivity of it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's the restricted access to it that makes it valuable. And by flooding the market, by literally borrowing the simplest of all principles of economics of supply and demand, you're basically devaluing their entire currency. Now, I understand completely on an individual basis, this is purely symbolic. But if billions of people do this, it forces an entire restructuring of our entire intelligence agencies and what we use as priority for information, and what we value.
Because it's actually really interesting, because I remember after September 11th, and then there was the whole everything is going to be tracked. Was it the Patriot Act or something like that? I can't remember all that. And everybody, I mean, there's just so many little acts out here to keep up with them, and everybody freaking out, the government's watching us, and it's this big conspiracy thing. And I'm going, how the heck are they ever going? I mean, nothing's being kept up with anyway. How are they going to keep up with that? How are they going to watch us all? Do they really? Yeah. I mean, and what are they going to do? And look at social media now. Basically, yes, everything's out there. Yes. If you're going to put anything on Facebook, I don't care. You've now given it away to the public. Just consider it done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally.
We've become our own big brothers through social media. Yeah. And one of the things that happens is, it's interesting because when I first started this project, this is going on 17 years now. And it's also interesting looking at what the project meant then versus what it means now. 17 years ago, people were telling me, don't show up at my house, or don't come near me because I don't want to be monitored. And now, I'll show the project, and every now and then I'll get this response of like, I don't get this. What's the big deal? This looks like my Instagram feed. So how normalized self-surveillance has become, and how we don't even realize when we're doing this. This has become so commonplace. I think this is a huge shift in culture. Now, 17 years ago, this idea of putting so much information out to be anonymous, it worked because it was still somewhat of an analog process, and it was also a different analog culture. These days, with machine learning and machine intelligence, all of this information is, it's not meant for human consumption. It's meant for machine consumption, and they can read and run through this information a lot faster than a human being. So that's a huge shift in culture that we're seeing, the shift from the analog intelligence agency to the digital, the algorithms which are deciding what is important and what isn't. And that is far, far more difficult to hide from. Your digital footprint.
Yeah. So basically, they can read and track, and they can listen to our shows, because they can. And so, we have changed. And think about it. I mean, back to September 11th to now, where we are. Yeah. Look how fast things have actually changed, overnight, from going with what you're doing with your website and taking a photo all the time. And you would do it like you would have to actually physically upload the photo at those days, right? When you put it on your website.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
This is I had. Was it pre-Google?
Well, it was right at the early. It was during the early stages of it. Well, it's gone through so many. The project has gone through so many iterations because of the technology has changed so much over the years. But yeah, I mean, it's really amazing to see how much our world and how much our daily lives have changed over this. So yeah.
This is interesting. And then some of the art that I've seen of yours, where you've put it together like almost like a collage, where it's like I've never seen anything like it. Let's put it that way. Which I love. I love it when there's something I've never seen. That's what art is about. And it makes you really think of like how much you've done. Like when all your photos are put together in those pieces, like you realize just how much you've done. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of food and a lot of toilets. that you photograph?
Yes, well, because I've sent all these photos. So basically, I've documented my life every few moments, and it's very important that it's not a set finite amount of time, because this is where I have control over what I consider a change in location or change in condition. So all these data points, all these markers are then photographed and then uploaded. Back in the early days of this project, I was basically using the digital equivalent of duct tape, of putting this camera with this GPS unit, with this laptop, with this type of connectivity. Now it's essentially an iPhone app. And actually, your iPhone or your Android phone, just to say your smartphone, is far, far, far more sophisticated technologically in tracking you than my software ever could. So it's already happening. We're all doing this. I think a really important thing to keep in mind is how much our world has changed between not only from September 11th to today, say 2001, but if you go backwards from September 11, 2001, and if you go 17 years backwards, you end up in 1984. Yeah.
Okay, it's absolutely true. Interesting. Funny. Yeah, we just did an interview with a gentleman, Neil Killian, who talks about life cycles. He's on his third book, and how everything goes in the years of 12 years. Like certain things happen in stages to people, and how it's all connected. It's kind of crazy, but it makes you think.
He took the biographies of famous people like Napoleon and looked at when he had his biggest defeats and his biggest wins, and everything was every 12 years. And then there was a little offshoot of every 7 years, things don't go all that well.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So if you look at that cycle, so we're talking about how different our culture is today. But if you go 17 years back from that was the first time the space shuttle made its launch. Or this was, 1984. This is when we boycotted the Olympics in Moscow.
Wow.
Yeah, this is.
I'm getting tripped out with all these interviews, all this kind of thing. Now I'm starting to whoa, it's trippy. That's trippy, but it takes thinking. I think I've learned this just in photography and walking, and we photograph. You may be walking, photograph as you go, and rarely do we turn around and look backwards. And every time you look backwards, you see something completely new and new. Like you may suddenly see the sunrise. You may see, a different bug or whatever. But we oftentimes don't kind of unravel things by going backwards. We keep going forward because we're, human beings. We're like ants. We just keep doing. But going backwards is key. That's interesting. That's really fascinating.
And what this project has allowed me to do is really, I've been doing this project for half my adult life now. More than a third of my entire life since birth. So I've had this real privilege to be able to look backwards and look at what the project meant at one point in time and what it means today. So a lot of what's happening, a lot of what I'm interested in is this idea of camouflage or literally hiding in plain sight with data, what part of the data is important, what part isn't. And really what happens is when I'm putting up this much information, all visual information, there is significant information, but it becomes much more anonymous and private. And surprisingly, for a person who lives their entire life so transparently and openly, I live a very private and anonymous life in general. So you know very little about me in the public, aside from what I want you to know about me in the public.
So, and then it's that in-between bubble that gets everybody guessing and thinking. You know what I mean? There's that in-between zone between the private, the public. There's always that bubble. It's a champagne bubble. That's part where your art is about making people think. I always think, and I think that's what's so fascinating about what you're doing is really makes us stop and think. And Tanya, I find this, we always talk about, all kinds of artists, musicians, poets, dancers can be part of the National Parks Arts Foundation, Artist in Residence program, but I think this takes the cake. Hasan is totally like blown out of the water in a new art form. You think?
Oh, well, it's so important. It has to do with, again, a sense of place, a sense of time. And this is part of everything that is happening in our world right now. So we can't deny it at all. And, I'm wondering how the difference and the similarities from, being in a national park, a government entity, and how the surveillance, that kind of thing too. And it's true that when we look back and we're able to see from 1984 even what has influenced our lives, we can't deny that the external things will influence our art. So,
well, I want you to know, Tanya, that every time we have a conversation with you, in the space of maybe 3 hours, my computer is full of ads about Hawaii.
Well, it's true. Yeah, that's because you're birthday girl. No, I'm just kidding. But,
yes.
It's the same birthday. It's special. But, it is interesting when you talk about surveillance, too. And I think about, all the way back to, like, the Cuban Missile Crisis and how surveillance was when, you've got to think about, like, submarines and what they were doing in tracking and codes. And it is really interesting, just even how those charts were made. What do you think about that part, Hasan, in regards to surveillance and sound, and like capturing that?
Yeah. Well, one of the project that I'm working on here, and what I've been really interested in, is this relationship between territory and surveillance, between landscape and surveillance. And particularly when you look at it from the history of landscape painting, we generally tend to think of the genre of landscape painting as this very innocent it's hard to be political about this beautiful landscape. Well, it's actually anything but innocent. And particularly the history of landscape painting in an American context. Many times, the reasons we painted these beautiful mountains and that beautiful landscape was not necessarily for their physical beauty, not for the sublime, but for the economic value of the nickel and the iron and the copper that was in that mountain before that mountain became U.S. territory. So many of these early paintings were actually measuring and surveying of the American West, of the American political and territorial expansion. And in this expansion, by depicting it visually, and this is very important that these images were depicted before, these American images became depicted before they became America. When those images became real, or when those images became visible, that's what gave us the political and the military will to go and conquer that land and take that and expand our country. So Hawaii has a very unique position in the history of manifest destiny of America. And particularly when you look at the measuring and expanding and surveying of an expanding country, Hawaii being the 50th state to join the Union, the most recent. So not only now that we've expanded from the Atlantic coast to the Pacific coast, now we've crossed across that ocean. We went to the middle of the Pacific on this rock, and now we're at the top of the Pacific, at the top of these rocks. And in Hawaiian culture, the mountaintops of every mountain is sacred of the islands. And yet, when you go to every single one of these top mountaintops, every single one of them has a military or a government surveillance object, these telescopes. Now, many of them are doing scientific research, of course, but there is a very close link between the military and the science that takes place. Many of these island mountaintops you can't even get to because they're restricted military access. Wow. So now, not only we've come all the way across the ocean and we're in the middle of this rock, now we've gone to the top, and now we're looking outward into the sky, and we're measuring that. And how this relates to, say, how this relates to, say, the cyberspace and technology. You know, when you look at URLs and domains, and even just the word domain, linguistically, when you look at, say, a .us, when was the last time we used a .us website? I mean, they exist, but we rarely use them. But you know, we use .jps all the time, we use .uk, .au, but it's assumed with the internet, if it does not have a two-letter country, it is American, because that we own that space. We own this virtual space because it's ours. We've claimed it.
Oh, wow.
So there's a huge shift taking place from the old school 19th century paintings of us expanding as a country, us growing as a military and political might, and now we own cyberspace and we own information.
Well, and you know, and by the way, I just want people to know we're recording this interview on Hawaii Statehood Day, August 21st. So it's crazy that we're talking about this too, because when you think about how that whole thing happened is it's just it's an intense history. And when you think about that, yes, how you know, here we are now with the sky part of it and the cyberspace, it is interesting because it's like we have international waters, right? So that, I mean, that's why cruise ships can gamble. You have a casino on board because we have international waters. And so what happens, we own that part. So where do those lines come and go? How do they divide that up? Like up there?
Well, because
satellite?
We have shifted on an economic and cultural side. We've shifted where the physical property or the physical territory is not where the future value is. The future value is in intellectual property, not necessarily in information, in ephemera, and interestingly enough, we're seeing it in art. We're seeing it in one of the most in a bizarre turn of events. We're actually seeing many artworks, intellectual property, have greater value than physical property, than actual land. So I think there will be a day when intellectual property exceeds the value of physical property, and we're just starting that transition right now.
Mm-hmm.
And artists are at the forefront of it.
And it's true, because even if you think about music and everything that's going on right now, because the internet is the Wild West when it comes to like YouTube. If what music you can use on a YouTube video, and absolutely artists need to have those rights. But there's huge struggles over it right now of who knows what. If you put something up on Facebook now, it is public domain. And so I was like, artists, people can do what they want with it once you put it out there.
Right.
But then if everybody started, doing that, you would lose that exclusivity again, right? When I think about what you've done, and if art, how interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah, and this is why I think this residency, particularly in Hawaii, in a national park, in the territory of this national park, within the landscape, in the physical land. This is why this is so important, because this actually connects all of these threads.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you're actually in Oceania.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, we have territories and national parks in Guam, the Virgin Islands, U.S. Virgin Islands, and I think this is so interesting and a lot of that is all the military parks, and there's a lot of military history in our park units, but also when you're talking about the manifest destiny and the artists, those landscapes. I mean, you even think about a lot of the photographers out there were doing surveillance. They were looking at, surveying the land, and but that was part of how our park system came to be, was the artists that went out there and painted what was out there. That's how
absolutely.
We got our
And those beautiful photographs and those beautiful paintings, they were commissioned by the government.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Wow.
So there's a really deep history of this, taking this visual representation of this majestic land and turning it into political dominance.
This is fascinating. Now, do you ever do like videos of how you going to do this? Like, how are you doing this? I want to know how, because you're going up. You're going to beam up, basically.
Yes. Well, a lot of the, okay. So my work, my work predominantly exists as data or as data sets or as this type of virtual information. But for most purposes, an Excel spreadsheet and just raw data is kind of pretty ugly. It's not very, it's not very aesthetic. But so I also work as an artist at the same time, and I realize that there are certain priorities when you're working from a visual perspective. So how does this information reach the public? How is it portrayed? How is it interpreted? Because an artist throughout history, artists have always been this interpreter of their society and what's happening. Artists have always held up a mirror or held up a way of reading what's happening around us. So artists have always been at the forefront of that. So I find myself in that same lineage of, well, what's happening around us? What is our culture right now? So a lot of the things that we do, a lot of things we live with, we're dealing with images, we're dealing with screens, we're dealing with sounds. So these are parts of my practice. So I've been doing a lot of work when I've been going out in the middle of the night here and setting up near night vision cameras and trying to read the information. Where say, had I been doing this 100 years ago, I would be sitting out an easel in plein air and painting the volcano. Now, instead of doing that, I'm setting up my night vision cameras and photographing that exact same scene that you would see today. And there's an interesting then and now that you start seeing also in the work when you look at the earlier paintings and then you compare them to what the geography looks today. And obviously, Hawaii is a constantly changing geography. I mean, I think in the last month and a half, Hawaii has now added nearly 1,000 acres of land just from the lava overflow.
Isn't that wild? That's
it's just even that concept to wrap your brain around the fact that this island is 1,000 acres larger than it was a month and a half ago.
That's amazing. I have to say, Tanya, I don't know what's going on in Hawaii, but this has been a really fascinating series this year for Hawaii. Definitely between lava and definitely the artists that have been at the Art B&B over there, which I know now there's cats, so it's a cat B&B, the cat house. No, but this is so interesting to me how everyone's. I have to say the last two artists before you there, they all connected with this idea of the land changing, whether it's invasive species, and then also they also all connected, obviously, with what was going on with the lava, but also all connected with the military history there. I know it's just the lasers that were used and things like that at night. So there was this connection. So did you dig into any of that when you're out there? You haven't been out there that long yet.
No, I've been here almost a month now.
You're almost done. Okay.
I'm almost done. Well, of course, there's a little bit of a glitch in the fact that the park, a big chunk of the park is closed because, well, parts of it are literally falling into the earth in a pit of fire. Mm-hmm. So when you start thinking about what is actually happening, it's pretty mind-boggling. Every time that I drive over Highway 11 near Volcano, near the crater, you see the tears in the road. You see them every day. They spray paint a new line because that's where the new crack has developed. Things have settled down a little bit in the last week, but this it is so primal and so raw of watching the earth being made. And then, of course, talking to the park rangers, it's just incredibly fascinating when, you know, they'll say, hey, we got this rock, and this rock is 1 week old. We tend to think of rocks in geological time as more than 1 week. I mean, we tend to think of them as like millions of years old, but when you hold a piece of rock that's a week old, it really changes your relationship to the land.
That really does. I mean, I've never even thought of that. That's crazy. So when you knew you were going to go and you saw what was going on, you know, did you want to go even more because you knew it was changing?
Yeah.
Cool.
Of
Yeah.
course.
I would too. Yeah.
Again, I think what it does here, it really challenges your sense of scale in so many ways. So it challenges your sense of scale in the time and the fact that, you know, we talked about rocks and how millions of years, and then all of a sudden this rock just came up. And then you start thinking about, oh, it's an island. And then you realize, no, this actually takes a really long time to get from one point to the other point because of the topography and the geology of this island. I mean, you can't just drive over many of these spaces or many of these roads. So it's a really unique relationship to the human scale, to the land, to the landscape, and where the human is situated in that landscape. And this is something that I've been really just fascinated with in my work in terms of where the human blends into the landscape and what part of it is readable and what part of it becomes camouflage, where the human just blends right into the landscape.
This is fascinating. Tanya, I want to go back to you before I know that, you know, the big wind comes. I know you've always got deadlines, so it's the best thing is that everyone gets your newsletter if they go to nationalparks-arts-foundation.org. Any deadlines that people should know starting, you know, in September?
Yes, off the top of my head, we have a couple at Gettysburg, battlefields. We have partnered with the Poetry Foundation. We'll be having an event at the Library of Congress. But as far as deadlines go, just keep on looking, because we've even had residencies that only have, a couple weeks for applications. We've even had some up, 2 years ago that were only up for a couple days. So wow. I just need to tell people to keep looking, and we are going to do another Hawaii one in the winter. And the amazing thing about this one is that it's a choose your own date for November, December, January, February. I think 4 months of you get to choose 30 days within that period. So we wanted to open it up to the academic calendar and people not on the calendar too. So yeah, you kind of get to choose your own, which is nice to choose your own adventure. So yeah.
And your own, 1-year-old rock or 10-week-old rock or something. You can see how it's changed for sure. I want to thank you, Tanya. I know Nancy and I both appreciate you joining us, because I know that things are rapidly changing there on the wind side for you out there. We want you all to stay safe. Again, nationalparks-arts-foundation.org is the site to go to, and also follow them on Facebook and Twitter. But again, get that newsletter, because there's always new opportunities, and when they come, you got to jump on them and get it done. Hasan,
there's sorry to interrupt, but there's if I could do a shout out for the groups that have supported us, I'd love to. Is that okay?
Please do.
We always like that. Thank a wonderful, wonderful group called Creative Capital that supports artists, and the National Endowment for the Arts, and Cindy Orlando and Laura Schuster at Hawai'i Volcanoes National Park, along with the rest of the staff and the Friends Group of Hawai'i Volcanoes National Park. So thank them too.
Yeah, these are all the organizations that, and this happens like in Gettysburg too, right? You have these different endowments and endowment groups and arts groups that come in, and Friends of the Park, and that work together to make these opportunities happen. So a lot goes into it, to be able to.
Exactly. I don't thank them enough. So I thought I would the same. Thanks for letting me do that.
Awesome. Always,
No problem.
always. Hasan, would you go back again?
Oh,
do another
absolutely.
residency?
You don't have to twist my arm to jump in one of these, because this is really phenomenal. And really, I really want to second what Tanya was saying in the terms of support. In artists look for opportunities, but they also look for recognition, but they also need the support. And it is incredibly, I'm incredibly grateful for the people that made this happen and allowed me to spend this time here, because this is a completely different way of working. I think had I not had this opportunity to be here, this work would not have happened. And even just the way I'm even working, it's a very different way that I normally work. And this is what allows us to create differently. And to come up with new ways. So, I really have to thank all the people that have made this possible. So Tanya, thank you. Thanks to the National Parks-Arts Foundation and all the partner organizations, the Volcanoes Park here. Everything has been really amazing, and I can't stress that. And for the artists that are considering applying, just keep applying. Just get at it, because sooner or later it's going to be. I applied one I think a couple of months ago, and that didn't happen. But then we did it again, and it's like, hey, let's do this. So just I think it's really just the encouragement is to keep at it and keep getting the work out there, because that's what helps not only helps with the recognition of the work, but it actually helps you think about your own work differently.
I agree. And the thing is, like, I want to see, I can't wait to see everything that you do from Hawaii, but I would love to see you in Chaco Canyon. And then I'd love to also see you at Gettysburg and see what you do at Gettysburg. That would be so fascinating to see you working there. I heard that Chip Beck is going to Chaco Canyon. Tanya, our combat artist friend, will be there.
It's true? Isn't that exciting?
Yeah,
cool.
And we're like looking at our trip that we're taking to Kentucky and going, how do we make a detour to northern New Mexico? Because detours.
It's quite a detour. You can do it. That's on the way to Kentucky.
Sure, why not? It sounds good to me.
It's not like we drive in a straight line.
No. Hasan, before you leave, I do want to ask, how many countries have you been to? It's like, how many airplane bathrooms have you been to?
Oh, yes. It's a lot. It's a lot. It has to be 100 plus. But there's plenty of places that I haven't been, and I would love to do more work in some of those places. There's been a lot of good stuff.
National Parks Arts Foundation goes global. Woohoo! Yes. Just saying.
Oh yes, it's true. It's entirely true.
See, and that's the thing. Art transcends, and it goes everywhere. Art doesn't have a passport problem. but again, that may change, right, Hasan? That may all change. It's changing now. So everybody, again, follow Hasan. Literally, go to his website, and I'm going to spell it out. It's Elahi. Now, did I pronounce your name correctly, Elahi?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so there it is, elahi.org. Follow him there, and everyone, again, National Parks Arts Foundation. .org. We want to thank our listeners always joining us here on Big Blend Radio. We air Sunday through Friday. Our shows go live, so you can listen to them on Blog Talk, radio.com. But if you go to our site, bigblendradio.com, you'll see the schedule, so you can link into, on-demand episodes from the place of your choice, whether it's iTunes, TuneIn, or Spotify, or iHeartRadio. It's all there. And we've got music for you. Okay, we always love to play Makana when we have our Hawaii shows here with Tanya. And this one is Hi'ilawe. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Tanya? Hi'ilawe?
Oh, most definitely. I would know, especially. Yeah.
Hi'ilawe. And it's awesome. Makana is one of the top flat key guitar players. He's an incredible human being. And go to his website, makana-music.com. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Kumaga kai kanai au I lave Kapapalohe mai au maukele Kumaga kai kanai au I lave Kapapalohe mai au maukele Wakele mai au I kanui manu Walau nei puni vai pio Wakele mai au I kanui manu Walau nei puni vai pio Aole no vau e loa mai Iuhi vai anō te tuhiwi E hiva ana kamakua I leia ina ke kupuna E hiva ana kamakua I leia ina ke kupuna No puna ke laili amnai Nui ka baile au I lave No puna ke laili amnai Nui ka baile au I lave Hainai mai na kapuana Kumaka kai kanai I lave Hainai mai na kapuana Kumaka kai kanai I lave And so the story is told All eyes rest upon Hi'ilave Ainda ia mai na kapuana Kumagagai kamnea Hi'ilave